Safety in the laboratory. Please take a moment to review the learning objectives prior to completing this presentation. The number one rule of safety in the lab, as with safety most everywhere else, is the old axiom that an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, and in this day and age, a ton of paperwork. OSHA, CDC, and the World Health Organization all have recommendations for safe practices in the medical field. OSHA, or the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, is responsible for on-the-job safety. It doesn't matter whether you're flipping burgers or pushing buttons at a power plant, OSHA is responsible for making sure that the work environment is safe. They divide hazards into three basic categories: chemical hazards, physical hazards, and biohazards. Biohazards will be dealt with in the presentation called infection control. Employers must provide a means to employees to report all safety concerns. Employers are required to monitor on-the-job accidents and document corrective action. The Center for Disease Control and Prevention monitors all outbreaks of infectious disease in the United States. As a part of that, they monitor the infection of healthcare workers and the spread of nosocomial infections among patients in healthcare settings. They have established guidelines for specific and universal precautions, which are discussed more in detail in the infection control presentation. Chemical hazards. The first thing is to know what chemicals are in the lab and how to properly handle each. The MSDS is a sheet that is provided by the manufacturer, which gives information about chemical products. It must contain the name of the chemical and any applicable components. It gives storage requirements, including special storage requirements such as protect from light. We'll talk more about the levels of danger when we talk about labeling. It should recommend suggested protective equipment if it is necessary, and should outline the procedure for handling a spill. You need to be careful when reading these. We had an MSDS in the laboratory, and we had a small spill of perchloric acid, maybe 2 or 3 teaspoons. Unfortunately, when we pulled up the MSDS we had, its recommendation was to dig a pit. We didn't think the people in the office below us would have appreciated that much. It's necessary to properly label all chemicals. Every container should identify the chemical name, the date prepared, and the person preparing it. Hazard levels should be identified on the National Fire Protection Association diamond. Each quadrant contains a number from 0 to 4. These will be found in the MSDS sheet. The blue section lists health hazards. The red section is a flammability hazard. The yellow section is for reactivity, such as oxidizing agents, and the white section would hold special instructions. Never use something from an unlabeled container. When I first came into the laboratory in 2000 at school, there were numerous containers of clear, colorless, odorless liquid. It could have been anything from water to saline to iron oxide. There's no telling what it was. My rule of thumb, if in doubt, throw it out. First aid for chemical exposure. First thing, again, is to know what to do, know where the safety equipment is before you need to use it. For external exposure, or someone spills something on themselves, you should remove any saturated clothing and place the affected area under running water. If possible, you can use a sink. If it has splashed into the face, you're going to need to use an eye wash, or you may need to use a safety shower if it has affected a large area of the body or someplace where it would be very difficult to get it into the sink. For internal exposure, remember that you should not automatically induce vomiting. Some chemicals have more danger coming up than staying down. You can check the MSDS or contact your poison control center. You should always refer the victim to proper medical care. Physical hazards include electrical, fire, and weather. To prevent electrical hazards, keep liquids away from electrical equipment. Always unplug electrical equipment before servicing. Do not use extension cords or multi-port outlets. This actually has to be modified a bit. Make sure that you are using the proper cord or multi-port outlet. Extension cords are still frowned upon, but there are now many heavy-duty multi-port outlets designed specifically to plug large equipment into. Check cords regularly for wear. Any instrument which sits in the same place for a long time, where the cord goes over the edge of the counter, may become frayed over time. You should always unplug defective equipment. Know the signs of electrocution. Often victims won't, turn into the Yosemite Sam where he's zapped and you can suddenly see his bones or his hair starts smoking. Most of the time what happens is it's a much lower voltage, and when they touch it, it simply renders them unable to move. Don't touch the victim. You just wind up with a chain of people who are electrocuting themselves and can't move. You should shut off the power supply at the breaker box or an emergency power shutdown. Don't try to pull the plug. You don't know where the short is at. Use a non-conductive item to push them away from the source. A plastic chair or wooden broom handle works fine for this purpose. You should always refer them to emergency medical services. Electrocution can lead to severe heart problems and death. Fire. You should always know the escape routes, and it is required for most public buildings to have these posted somewhere. Know the location of all safety equipment such as fire blankets and extinguishers. Remember the RACE procedure. Rescue, alarm, contain, and extinguish. Pull people away who are in danger. Pull the fire alarm. Shut doors and windows to contain the fire, and extinguish if possible. When putting out a fire, you need to remember a fire needs 3 things: oxygen, heat, and fuel. If you remove any of them, the fire dies. There are a variety of types of fire extinguishers. Type A is a simple water extinguisher. This is to be used only on ordinary combustibles such as paper, wood, cloth, and plastic. A Type BC extinguisher contains CO2. It should be used for flammable liquids or electrical fires. You must take special precaution with this type of extinguisher as it removes oxygen from the fire, and as the CO2 dissipates, the fire can reignite if you don't watch it carefully. The most common is the ABC extinguisher. This is a dry chemical and can be used on all types of fire. One would think it wouldn't be necessary to point this out, but always make sure that you position yourself between an exit and the fire, and don't let the fire get between you and the exit. Common sense is such a wonderful thing. Using fire extinguisher, we have the acronym PASS. Pull the pin, aim the extinguisher at the base of the fire, squeeze the handle, and sweep from side to side along the base of the fire to put it out. Weather emergencies. These are basically simple. Know where to go in case of emergency weather conditions. Around here, we're obviously most concerned about tornadoes, and we have had a few earthquakes. If we get a hurricane this far inland, might as well just give it up. You should know your role in patient evacuation and familiarize yourself with the facility's disaster plans.